Let's take a look back on that huge weekend in the FA Cup then with a man whose club were knocked out a long time ago. Very good morning to talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Crooky morning.
Good morning, Crookie.
That's a low blow from our script writers here.
It certainly was. You know, the sun is shining. I've woken up in a good mood and you just put me in a bad one. So cheers for that.
Yeah. I mean, look, as far as United's City rivals, City are concerned, Nico O'Reilly, he could have gone to Chelsea, couldn't he, at one stage?
Yeah, I mean, what Man City have been really good at in the last few years is selling their young players for decent money. But obviously O'Reilly is one they decided to keep hold of. And you've got to say on the evidence of yesterday in that second half, that was a decision that's been vindicated because Ali's dead right. They were in big trouble, weren't they, at half-time,
Yeah.
City, even though they missed a couple of glorious chances. But the second half, Bournemouth didn't lay a glove on them. And I think Nico O'Reilly obviously played a massive part in that. Marmoush with his goal as well. Well, I'm not sure Kepa Arrizabalaga would have been at home watching replays of that with any great pride last night. But it's ominous for the other teams left in the draw because we're talking about Crystal Palace may win their first ever trophy. Forest and Villa have not won it since the 1950s. What an opportunity for them. But 7 times in a row, Manchester City have reached the semi-finals of the FA Cup, and more often than not, they've gone on to win it. So I think you have to say, even though they're not having a stellar season, City going into the semi-finals, for me, the favourites to win it.
I think you're right, Cricket. Couldn't agree more. The only thing I would say, that we look at the goal, maybe I'm sticking up for the goalie too much. It does go through defenders' legs, and I think he sees it late. It's hit early, but you're right, he probably should have done better. Moving on to the Villa, Cricket, we're getting a little bit carried away. As one or two, we've been singing the praises of Marcus Rashford, and some of the listeners have been saying we're getting a little bit carried away here.
Well, I'm sure when Gabby comes on later, he'll be touting Marcus Rashford.
No doubt about it.
Ballon d'Or winner.
Prime Minister.
Not that he'd want to get carried away. It's funny. I didn't watch this game live. I was at Ascot Races yesterday, treating the mother-in-law to a day out. But I was getting messages at 0-0 saying that if Marcus Rashford was producing this kind of performance in a Manchester United shirt, then he'd be vilified. And all of a sudden he scores twice in a few minutes and he ends up getting the man of the match. So football can be a fickle game, can't it? But great for his confidence to get himself on the score sheet. Great for Villa. I think of all the teams in the Premier League, they did the best business in January, just in terms of strengthening that squad. You look at the depth now they've got coming off the bench, and obviously they're in a brilliant position to challenge for a Champions League place again. They've got an FA Cup semi-final to look forward to. It's 29 years since they won a trophy when our own Andy Townsend captained them to that League Cup win over Leeds. And of course, they're still in the Champions League as well, so much to play for. And I guess if Thomas Tuchel was watching, he'll say that he was vindicated by Rashford's double in putting him in the England squad.
I mean, for my money, Crookie, the best performance of the weekend was from Palace. And what a week Eberechi Eze's had. You know, comes on, cameo for England, scores a goal, scores a blinding goal for Palace, gets an assist as well. And Palace, you know, away from home, they're almost unbeatable.
No, brilliant.
They're incredible.
Brilliant they were.
They really are. And when you look at Palace, usually you associate them with having brilliant home form, with Selhurst Park being a really difficult place to go. But you're right, on the road, Oliver Glasner is getting a tune out of them. And credit to him, because if you remember early in the season, they started badly. There were a few whispers that maybe Steve Parish, who wasn't afraid to make managerial changes, was possibly ready to pull the trigger again. But they've turned it around. And that was my favourite goal of the weekend, that from Eze. I thought it was a lovely strike. And yeah, they won't be easy for Villa in the semi-final, Palace, and I think it'd be great for them to get to Wembley again. And who knows, maybe Oliver Glasner might take a leaf out of Pard's books and bring out his dancing dad moves on the touchline at Wembley.
Crookie, I was right behind it, mate, and I said at the time, I said it was early kick-off, but it will struggle to be beaten all day, and I don't think it was. It was just a beautiful hit. He drops his shoulder, comes on, starts outside the post, comes in, brilliant finish. Crookie, tell me, are Arsenal potentially going to sign a centre-forward? That can't be right, can it?
I think they will finally sign a centre-forward this summer. Maybe a couple of transfer windows too late, certainly in terms of challenging for the title this season. Obviously, a lot of talk about Alexander Isak. I think he would be the dream ticket for Mikel Arteta, but he's obviously going to come at a premium. You're talking probably 120 to 150 million pounds. They've tried in the past with Benjamin Šeško. I know they asked RB Leipzig the question in January and were told no, he's staying at least until the end of the season. So I wouldn't rule him out. And the other name that we understand is on their radar is Victor Gyökeres. Obviously, at Sporting would be a cheaper option. I think they're willing to cash in for around about the £58 million mark. So potentially that is certainly the one that we're going to be keeping close attention on between now and when the window opens, obviously in June. It's an earlier transfer window, isn't it? And I would expect Arsenal to try and get their business done early. They've got Andrea Berta now confirmed as sporting director over the weekend, and he's a big fan of Gyökeres.
Alexander Isak's ears are still ringing from a couple of 100,000 Geordies telling him at the weekend, "You are going nowhere, son, nowhere at all." Crookie, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, pal. Have a good week.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy.
We will talk about those Newcastle celebrations, by the way, a little later in the programme. But, I mean, it just made me think, they've won the Carabao Cup and this happens. What happens if they win the league or a Champions League? What will the celebrations be like then? Absolutely incredible.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.